Welcome to Magical Books for Kids, a podcast sponsored by Magic Everywhere, Inc., a company based in Florida. Hosted by Michael John Sullivan, this is your place to hear the very best children's stories and an opportunity to get to know your favorite authors. Now, here is Michael John Sullivan.
Welcome to Magical Books for Kids. I'm Michael John Sullivan, and thank you again for joining us for another edition of our podcast. It can be heard weekly, free on all platforms, including Apple, Google Play, Spotify, our website, magiceverywhereinc.com, as well as YouTube. We are happy and honored to welcome children's author Whitney Beatty. She is a creative director, mother, and author who aims to use fiction to make life just a little easier for parents. Her genre, which she calls Magical Excuses for Mortal Parents, may be niche, but she sees a real need for it in her own life. Rapping impaired since birth, Whitney wrote Ham Hands the Christmas Elf to explain those not so nicely wrapped presents that Santa left under the Christmas tree for her two young children. She recently completed her second book, Larry Scuderi, The Forgetful Tooth Fairy, which she hopes to explain those awkward mornings when the Tooth Fairy forgot to stop by an ATM on her way. Whitney, thank you so much for joining us here on Magical Books for Kids. I love your titles. I love the ideas behind them. And it appears that you have two young children, so you're bringing back all these memories many years ago for me. So thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So as a child, I had my favorite books, mostly sports books. But as a child, we all had our favorite books. What were some of your favorite books as a child?
So I loved, and I think this book is still around, but I loved The Jolly Postman, and that whole series of books where you open letters to different characters in it, and I loved it because it was super fun as a little kid to like open all the mail and read through. But then as I got older, and I was 8 or 9, you start to get more of the humor and the jokes behind it. So I really like those kinds of books that have sort of layered humor that can appeal to little kids, but then as you get older, you sort of get it more. And then of course, Roald Dahl I was obsessed with Roald Dahl when I was growing up. I loved Matilda. I wanted to be Matilda. I am not Matilda. It didn't really pan out for me.
Right.
But yeah, those were some of my favorites.
Now, as you were getting older, for me, it was sports books or nothing. Were there any particular books? I've heard from many authors that Nancy Drew was a big influence in their lives because of the mysteries and everything. Was there a particular author or series that really caught your attention as you grew older?
So I never really got into Nancy Drew. I loved the Boxcar Children. Do you remember that series?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And as an adult, I was thinking about that the other day, and I was like, was that a real book series? That premise was insane, but I loved those books. I loved the family in that. And then the one book that I adored was the Mixed Up Files of, what is it? From the Mixed Up Files of Basil E.
Okay, right.
You remember that one where the girl?
I do. I remember the title. I remember it. Yeah, it was very difficult for me to pronounce when I was young. So there were certain books I don't want to read it because I can't pronounce it, whatever, that type of thing. So.
And what sports books were you most into?
Oh goodness gracious! I'm giving away my age, of course, but I grew up in the late '60s, early '70s is when I was young and in grade school during that time, and so was any kind of sports figure. It could be Hank Aaron. It could be Johnny Bench. It could be anybody, that it was associated with baseball, because I was a really big baseball fan, really big Yankee fan, reading up on Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, any kind of autobiographical books I was very into back then, because I wanted to learn about people, which is what most writers do. We like that and everything like that. So that was a lot of fun. And my parents finally gave up on dealing with me, trying to give me these other literature type of books until high school, when this English teacher got me involved with Charles Dickens, and I just fell in love with his writing.
That's cool.
A Christmas Carol is one of my favorite. I listen to the audiobook from time to time. I'll put it on at night and I'll just listen to it because I just think that the writing is interesting for that era. And to come up with that kind of idea and that kind of imagination, that's like fascinating me. People come up, the Harry Potter series, right? I mean,
Yeah.
my kids, my daughter grew up on that Harry Potter series. She
Yeah, I
could,
can't wait to introduce my kids to Harry Potter. I'm
mm,
really excited about that. My oldest is 5.5, so we're a little ways off, but
right, right. But you have two very young children. So do they have any particular favorite books? Are your books their
um,
favorite
they, uh, they like my books. They are open to reading them, but they are not their favorites, which I'm
Yeah,
fine
I
to say.
understand that. I understand that. Yep.
But yeah, so my daughter, she really loves this book called Good Morning Grizzle Grump,
Okay.
which
Mhm.
we also really enjoy because she is not really a morning person. So sometimes in the morning we call her Grizzle Grump. It made for a very good nickname that she embraces. And then my son, he really loves this book that is also by an independently published author, Whitney Antis. Her book is What Did You Do Today? And it's just a really good book that kind of walks through like all the things you can do in a day. And it's really helpful for us to read with him because half the time he would get home from his daycare and we'd be like, what'd you do today? And he'd be like, I don't remember. All right,
Oh, that's a
let's
great
go through
answer.
the book. Let's jog your memory.
Yeah, see, that's a great thing about young children is they're so unfiltered. You know,
Oh yeah.
they'll say
Oh
really what,
yeah.
and they'll tell you what they think about somebody or something or whatever happened during that day. And as you said, as I said, there's no filter on it. So let's talk about your book. First of all, your website. Well, it's a littleslack.com.
Yes.
Now, could you not get whitneybeatty.com? Is that what happened? Or
I had whitneybeatty.com, but that was my like professional creative director website.
oh, I
Um,
see. Okay.
and so I actually so I started publishing under this like publishing moniker and brand, a little slack publishing, because
Hmm.
my books cut parents a little slack for magical beings not showing up
Right.
the way they
Hmm.
want. So, and I've been in marketing, so I find it really hard to resist the idea of creating a logo and a brand. I love it. So I was excited to do that, and so that's kind of where the website and the publishing name came from.
So you're a person that creates logos for people, or you do sort of like marketing,
So I
marketing?
do. I don't actually create the logos. I just know a bunch of very talented designers who I
Mhm.
hire to do the logos. But
Okay.
I do a lot of branding for companies and copywriting.
Okay, great. All right. So you're basically doing three different jobs here. Your
Yeah.
kids, okay, which is, believe me, I know that having been a stay-at-home dad, that was the dynamic of our household, that I put 230,000 miles on the Toyota 4Runner, driving them all over the place. So,
Oh my gosh.
so yeah, everybody knows that deal, the parents that are home. And of course, during this last year with the pandemic and everything, it must have been extremely difficult for having the kids home, having them to learn virtually. Is that what you guys faced there?
Well, so my kids, we kept them home for the first 3 months, and then their daycare remained open with precautions. And so we had them going back to daycare because I give a tremendous amount of credit to the people who have kept their kids home the entire time. It is incredibly difficult. And I think had we had to do that, something would have had to give on the work front for me. My husband is he's a doctor, so he had to go in no matter what.
Wow. So he's like on the front line and
Yeah.
everything like that. Yeah. Yeah. Well, God bless him and you for what you do. So at this, a little slack.com, I had a chance to take a look through the website. I thought it was tremendous. It was something I wish I had when I was home and dealing with two daughters. You know, like I
Thank
wish
you.
there was that particular information that was available for me. So you have many parts of it. You have stuff for teachers, parents, kids, and everything. Why don't you walk us through some of the important parts of that website? Again, it's a little slack, slack.com.
Yeah. So the part that changes the most and that I try to add to the most is the blog. And that's mostly for parents. And it's really just, you know, you having gone through it and raised little kids, I think that there's a ton of absurdity that goes along with it. And
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
my favorite part of having kids, is just like really embracing that sort of uh I don't I don't want to call it nonsense, but it is kind of nonsense, but it's delightful. You know, you don't know how your day is going to go,
Hmm.
and you can run into all kinds of obstacles and go on a different path than you expected. So I have a blog where I post some of my thoughts that are specific to parenting. I try to include some helpful ideas and resources for people who might be a little bit like me, which is a little bit scattered. And sometimes, you know, we want to do things in a way that, you know, makes our kid, like gives our kids magical memories, but we sort of forget that Easter's, you know, this weekend, or we want to do
Yeah.
something
Hmm.
nice for the teachers, but we forget that it's already Wednesday and Teacher Appreciation Week is happening right now, like those kinds of things.
Hmm.
So I try to think of like last minute ideas that you can do with just the stuff in your house to, you know, either appreciate teachers, pull off Easter. That one's always a big one for me, because you know, Easter's switching around a lot.
Oh, is that what
The
it is?
date
But yeah,
moving.
Easter is your
Yeah.
top one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, between Halloween, between Easter, between Christmas, Thanksgiving, between the school holidays as well, the concerts, they all these different things that you go through, soccer practice, things like
Oh
that.
yeah. There's a
Yeah.
lot to keep track of.
Right.
And that's sort of why, that's what started me writing in the first place. So Ham Ham's the Christmas Elf is my first one. And as you read at the beginning, like that came from me being terrible at wrapping presents. And I think my
Really?
son was 3.
Wow. Somebody else. Yay.
Yeah,
Some
it's a
awful.
real thing. Like we're
Yeah.
out there. And and like
Yeah.
I was wrapping presents on Christmas Eve, and I thought, like, this isn't going to be believable for very long, because if you think about it, if you really think about it, and Santa has this team of elves and they're Christmas professionals and they're magic, like they would be better at it. So I thought I had this idea for an elf that just had giant hands, that had a really hard time wrapping presents, but that desperately wanted to
I
do it.
love that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's what inspired the first one. And it was so much fun that I was like, well, what else could I write about? And so Larry Scuderi, the Forgetful Tooth Fairy, came out of that, because I didn't realize it until I had kids, but there is a lot of magic built into childhood and a lot of lore that parents have to pull off on top of the like soccer practice and the concerts and Halloween and like all the other stuff we have to do that our kids know we're doing. We also have to be pulling a lot of strings behind the scenes. So I thought I
Sure.
needed some help, and maybe other parents could use some help there too.
Yeah, parents are the protective of their childhood and their innocence. You mentioned the book about the elves with the big hands. To me, that's really funny. To be honest with you, that's a book I think that everybody should get for Christmas, because I'm awful at wrapping presents. I'm awful, and the kids in my family, they make fun of me all the time. They say, "Oh, look, Dad wrapped this one. You could tell he wrapped this one." And I'm rapping with all the love, but
Right,
it
exactly.
just doesn't
Exactly.
come out like that, that
Because it's
way.
also,
So
rapping is work. You're not just handing them a present and saying, you know, I'm bad at rapping. You are still taking the time.
exactly, and that's what I explained to them, and as young kids, they were happy about it. As they got older, they kind of like snickered a little bit, and then it's sort of like become like a fun thing for them.
Oh yeah,
If it's not wrapped the wrong way, then they're going to be upset. What good would perfection do at this point?
exactly. Then it wouldn't be authentic.
Right. Now, Ham Hands, the Christmas Elf, I think you showed me the cover and everything before. Is there a particular section or excerpt you would like to read from to give our
Ooh,
readers a chance to hear and feel the prose and how the story moves along? Because this is where I normally put the author on the spot. It's the only time I do it, because
okay.
I love to hear authors read their own stories. To me, it's fascinating. Um, I had we had when my kids were growing up, some of their favorite books were "If You Give a Mouse a Cookie,"
Oh yeah.
if you give a pig a pancake." Okay, and I had Laura Numeroff, the author, on, and it was such a thrill because I was telling her stories about how my kids would listen to it and then they'd look for a mouse around the house. And of course, I was not looking for a mouse. Okay. But they were, and they were carrying a cookie around the
Oh,
house.
that's so cute.
Yeah, looking for the mouse. And then I had to explain to them, the mouse are not really what we want in the house, And so, but Laura was on the show and everything. It was just a fun time. But what I'm saying is like, you're going to be reaching people similar to that with Ham Hands, the Christmas elf, because I just think that's a great idea. A great idea
Thank
of
you.
an elf with big hands who can't rap, as it hits home for me, of course. While my hands aren't as big, I'm sure, as the elves, I can't rap. So, so if you'd like to give us a couple pages of how it goes, please feel free to do.
Okay, I will do that. So just to set up the scene that I'm
Right.
going to be reading. So Ham Hands has gigantic hands, so he can't really do a lot of elf jobs. And the only job that he can do is bending the candy canes. They just come down an assembly line and he bends them one by one. And it's very boring.
That's a great job. Yeah. I want that
And
job.
he looks into the present wrapping room, so it's a perpetual temptation, but Santa won't move him up there because Santa says, how could kids believe in me if their presents are not wrapped perfectly? So one Christmas, there's a niceness surge. There's just a lot of kids being extra nice. So there's a lot more presents to wrap. And
Wait, what was that? What year was that?
We don't date it. It's sort of,
no, I'm just
whatever
I was just being
know.
teasing about what year was that when the kids were all being extra nice,
Yeah, well, no one really remembers it per se.
Right.
But
okay, which is why you don't have the year in it. That's right.
A couple presents get left behind in the present wrapping room. Ham Hands has to save the day by jumping in to wrap them because there's no one left. And it is for a particularly nice girl named Daria Dawson.
Okay, great.
Okay, so Ham Hands started wrapping. It did not go well. He moved on to the next one. Hey, maybe he was getting the hang of it. Oh wait, no, he was not. The bell started ringing. It was time to load Santa's sleigh, but Daria's presents looked terrible. What if they made her stop believing in Santa? What was Ham Hands going to do? So Ham Hands did the only thing he could. He wrote her a note and slipped the presents into Santa's sack. Merry Christmas, Daria. I'm sorry about your presents. I wanted to wrap them beautifully for you, but I have these giant hands and they got in the way. Here's a candy cane to make up for it. Your friend, Ham Hands the Christmas elf. That night, Ham Hands couldn't sleep. He imagined Santa delivering Daria's presents. He was going to be so mad. Then this is my favorite part because we have Santa going, Ham Hands.
So is that like the illustration where Santa's like going, oh.
Yes. Again, I know it's audio, but for your benefit.
Right. I'm describing, it's a cute picture of Santa where he's like going, where ham? What's going on?
But then I will not keep reading because I don't want to take up too much of your time. But basically what happens is that
we have to let people buy the book and find out.
Oh, you're right. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, let's because that's a perfect Christmas book.
Buy the book at alittleslack.com to find out what happens.
Now, Ham Hands the Christmas elf. Now, are your books on Amazon at all?
They are. Yes, they're
okay,
on Amazon. They are on my website, alittleslack.com, and they are also available from a website, Oakiebees, OAKIEBEES.com, which is like a consignment shop sort of thing for independent.
Right, I've heard of it and everything like that. That's great. So this book came out. How long ago did this book come out?
2019.
Okay, so it's been out a couple of years, and it's a perfect book for the holidays or any time of the year because I'm a person that actually celebrates Christmas year round. I keep up my Christmas tree up all year round.
Do you really?
I do, yes.
That's awesome. Yeah, and we have become, we don't keep our Christmas tree up, but Christmas books that I used to sort of keep separate and bring out at Christmas, partially due to my own like lack of organization, have now just become in the mix. I read a book about the Secret Santa Society to my daughter last night in June.
Oh, great for you.
Yeah.
But you also have a second book and it's recently completed. Now, is this a book that people can purchase? It's Larry.
Yeah, so Larry Scuderi came out in February of this year.
Okay.
And then, so this one is Larry Scuderi, the Forgetful Tooth Fairy. Unlike Ham Hands, it rhymes, which was a fun challenge. And and really just happened because I loved the name Larry Scuderi, the Forgetful Tooth Fairy. And
Yeah, we have like the lizard. Yeah, we have the lizard who loves a blizzard. It's Larry the Lizard. So I love.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So and that was your first attempt, right? Rhyming, just like we did. It was our first attempt. So how did it go for you through the process?
It was super fun. I really enjoyed writing a rhyme. It's completely different. Like you feel like you know, I read a lot about it, and I read a lot of tips, and I talked to some editors, and the biggest thing was obviously don't write something just because it rhymes that you wouldn't say, like you know, don't make the book work for rhyme versus
Right.
making the rhyme
It
work
makes
for
the
your book.
story. The story's got to go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so, but this one was good because whereas Ham Hands is kind of the origin story of this character, Larry Scuderi, the Forgetful Tooth Fairy, just sort of describes this tooth fairy who has been forgetful forever. And he, again, not to spoil anything, but he remains forgetful through the end of the story. He's just
Biggest
he's
worry,
just getting
right?
around to it. He's just getting
Yeah.
through life.
Yeah, that's a big worry for parents. I mean, as parents know with little small kids, they're expecting, you know, I don't know how much money is now being put under the pillow.
I don't
was
know. I
getting
kept it really
a
vague in
quarter.
this one
I was getting
because
a quarter. Yeah, I was getting
yeah.
a quarter in the 60s, right?
Well,
I
I was
don't know
gonna
how
say if
much
you
you'll
didn't add
get.
60s, just the quarter was gonna date you a little bit.
Well, sure, it's right. It sure would, you know. But how is that going for you now? Did you write this from experience, or did you write this to remind yourself that you better not forget the?
I wrote it more of a, so this one is actually inspired by my sister, who said that she has had several mornings where she had forgotten the tooth fairy and was like,
Okay.
oh yeah, sorry about that. So this one was, and then my neighbor also had the same challenge. It turns out it's a pretty common predicament that parents find themselves in, obviously.
Sure,
And
yeah. I mean, they go up, they're working, they're taking care of kids, they're trying to get them to school, or they're trying to get their lunches prepared, things like that. Yeah, of course. And as I said, I love the way you described magical excuses for mortal parents, because that's what it is.
yeah,
You know, and you're on the perfect show, Magical Books for Kids. So
I know. Thank you very much for having me.
yeah, you
And then one more, I just wanted to say that I am working on a third book that I don't know if I mentioned.
Wonderful. No, please tell us about it.
Okay, so the third book I'm working on right now, I've written it, the illustrations are in process, is Hugo von Hechter, the Kids Art Collector.
Okay.
And this is a book designed to explain where art goes when it disappears from the refrigerator overnight. Because sometimes in our house, especially, our kids are very prolific artists. They tend to churn out a lot of art with every session, and then they're all equally important masterpieces that have to go in the fridge. And then sometimes in order to get to the food in the fridge, some of them have to go.
So you must be inundated then with pictures on your fridge.
Yes.
So when is this? So when is this particular book coming out? And the second question is, how did you find your illustrator? Because I've found some fascinating stories from authors and how they find their illustrators.
So I found my illustrator. Actually, I am in a group for like freelance, mostly freelance creative professionals. There's some people who are more on the strategy side, but a lot of marketers. And so I was looking specifically for people who did illustration and design, because I wanted the same person to do the book layout and the illustration. And so I found Becca Kaiser, who I adore, in that group. And she had never illustrated a children's book before. I'd never written a children's book before. So I felt like this would be fun to figure out together. And now we have done, we're working on the third one. And then she has a second illustrator who she's working with on this one as well, Allison Aragante, because one, she works with her a lot. And then the second reason is that the premise of Hugo von Hechter, the Kids Art Collector, is that it is a character that lives in a world that looks very much like a children's drawing. And he's always trying to like capture it with art, but all of his art looks very perfect and pristine and more like our world. And so we have these two different illustration styles that go together in the book. And so that is coming along really well with the two different illustrators working together.
That's great. So your books, Ham Hands, the Christmas Elf, as well as Larry Scuderi, the Forgetful Tooth Fairy. I'm rhyming it as I go along. I'm pronouncing it. and these books can be bought on Amazon as well as other places. And also your website is a little slack, slack.com.
Yes.
So Whitney, thank you so much.
Thank you. This was really fun.
Yeah, this was, and the particular Christmas book is actually one I'm going to buy once I get off.
Oh,
because it reminds me of, like, I'm going to send it to my daughters. So they won't know this
awesome.
because they don't listen to my podcast anyway. So they're not going to know it. You know, they don't read my books. They don't listen to my podcast. They don't read my novels. So it's just dad is dad. And that's
right.
He's there to open the wallet. That's what he's there for. Right?
Exactly right.
Right. So this is a particular book I'm actually going to get. I'm going to send to them. I'm going to say, who did it remind you of?
That's awesome.
Thank
you so much.
Yeah, thank you. So Whitney Beatty, thank you so much again for joining us on Magical Books for Kids. You can hear this podcast every week on Apple, Spotify, Google Play, YouTube, our website, magiceverywhereinc.com. It's free. So no subscriptions or worries about paying for it. We hope we will listen to this particular podcast as well as join us next week again. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for listening to Magical Books for Kids, a podcast sponsored by Magic Everywhere INC, a company based in Florida, hosted by Michael John Sullivan. This is your place to hear the very best children's stories and an opportunity to get to know your favorite authors. Join us for another fun storytelling podcast next week.